Hello students, I am Dr. Arindam and from this class we'll be starting a series on biological oxidation and electron transport chain. Now mind it, for those who have logged into my channel recently, I started a series on molecular biology, but I got so many requests that please make a series on biological oxidation. Let us revise that first, and then from the next week we will continue into molecular biology, right? Now, you should know that MCI does not mention any biological oxidation or electron transport chain, etc., oxidative phosphorylation. These terms have been totally omitted from the competency list. And as I told you, you should always look into your competencies before reading the chapter, before reading the book. So, the exact thing that is mentioned in the competencies in BI 6.6. Alright, and it says describe the biochemical processes involved in generation of energy in the cells. That's it. Okay, so anything that is related to generation of energy. So just by knowing the steps of the electron transport chain, just by knowing the complexes and the ATP synthesis model is not enough. It used to be enough in earlier years, but now you need to know not more but something different. You need to approach the topic differently. Okay, so in today's series, in today's video of the, I think there will be a 4-part series. Okay, I'll make short videos in 4 parts so that it's not a stretched long video. I'll be covering all the basics that you need to know before we go into the chapter of biological oxidation, right? So we'll be taking on the bare basics, the minimum that you should know before we go into the proper oxidative phosphorylation chapter. I think most of you already know this from your class 2 classes. So as I go through the lectures, you will be able to easily correlate. So at first, all of this deals with cellular respiration. So the objective of respiration, the whole thing, cellular respiration, is needed to produce the ATP in the body. All right. Now, as you know, energy is released from the oxidation reactions in form of electrons. Okay, this is our main interest. So this is what we need to deal with. So once these electrons are generated, what happens? They are shuttled by electron carriers like nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, or it may be NADP plus also. They shuttle this electron into the ETC, or the electron transport chain. Okay, I'll be teaching you in detail what is electron transport chain, but just for now you should know that these electrons finally land up in the ETC, where what happens over there, this energy from the electrons is used in generation of ATP. This electron energy is utilized to form the energy currency in the form of adenosine triphosphate, and that happens in the ETC, okay, in the electron transport chain. Okay, very basic and very known stuff. Now a few things about metabolism you should also know. These are also very basic. That is, to define metabolism is the sum of chemical reactions in an organism. Okay, that is a loose definition. And regarding the energy, how the energy mechanism, dynamics is happening, you should know that catabolism is an energy releasing process. And what is the energy utilizing process? Of course, the opposite, that is anabolism. Okay, anabolism is energy using processes. So what happens actually? Catabolism provides anabolism its building blocks and energy. Okay, catabolism provides the building blocks and energy for anabolism. Okay, there is no doubt about all these things, and these are very basics that you already know. So we move on to the next slide. Now we give a pictorial representation of what exactly happens inside the cell. Okay, so here's what happens. You know, anabolism is a process in which complex stuffs are formed from simple stuff. Okay, and that means glucose leads to formation of glycogen. From glucose, glycogen is produced. Okay, this is an example of carbohydrate metabolism, right? And in the process, what happens? The energy from ATP is stored into those compounds. So during anabolism, mainly what happens? ATP is utilized. Okay. It is the catabolism, it is the catabolic phase where ATP is produced. Okay, because catabolism is the energy yielding process and anabolism is the energy using process. So catabolism will lead to production of ATP. So remember this, guys. So energy from the fuel or from photosynthesis. We are not discussing plant. Okay, you can, this is a generalized slide. So from our fuel, that is when glycogen is broken down into glucose, it also produces energy in the form of ATP or energy reducing equivalent like NADH or NADH, FADH2. They ultimately get converted to ATP. How? We will discuss in very soon. Now, regarding this term biological oxidation, you already know that what is oxidation, right? This is the exact picture. This can be a pictorial representation of what exactly happens in our body. So the electrons from the food, okay, the sources, the main high energy compounds, they undergo oxidation, okay, in a step by step manner, in a phasic way. Okay, there are levels of energy, there are packets of energy. So they undergo transformation from a high energy state to a low energy state in a stepwise manner. Okay, in a stepwise manner. Okay, they don't lose their charge or they don't get oxidized just like that. They undergo step by step process and the final electron acceptor is always water in all biological systems. Okay. In the meantime, in the process, it loses energy, the electron from a higher energy state, it comes to a lower energy state, and where that energy is used, I already told you that energy is used for ATP synthesis, right? So let us see what exactly happens. Okay. As I told you, I will not be going into electron transport chain or oxidative phosphorylation in today's class, but I will be orienting you with the basics so that from the next part, when you go into the chapter proper, you are well equipped with the concept. So we can see I have drawn a basic slide of carbohydrate metabolism. Okay, so we see over here that in the step 1, what is happening? Complex polysaccharides are broken down to simple glucose. Okay, this is the basic catabolic process by which glucose will be absorbed, okay, in the body. Okay, we are considering the general metabolism from proctodium to stomodium, okay, from eating to production of energy. So first glucose undergoes glycolysis, okay, to form pyruvate. So and then it undergoes conversion to acetyl coenzyme A. We are concerned about carbohydrate metabolism. Counterpart of protein and fat metabolism also land up in acetyl CoA, and the same thing, they can produce energy in the same way. So first is breakdown of large macromolecules to simple subunit, and the next part is breakdown of simple subunit to acetyl coenzyme A, followed by production of limited amount of ATP and NADH. You already know in glycolysis as well as in TCA cycle, NADH and ATP are produced. It may not be a huge amount, but they are still produced without the involvement of electron transport chain. This is very important, and we will be discussing this type of production of ATP in as we go into the classes. Now, what happens in part 3? Part 3, all the reducing equivalents undergo complete oxidation. Okay, by complete oxidation we mean production of simpler forms. That is, no longer it remains as a coenzyme A, no longer it remains as pyruvate or a 3 carbon or 6 carbon compound. It is converted to 1 carbon compound, that is carbon dioxide, and the simplest electron acceptor, that is water. Okay, so when that happens, large amount of NADH and ATP are produced, and that complete oxidation only takes place in the mitochondria. Okay, this is the mitochondrial membrane. The whole thing takes place in the mitochondria, right? So this is how cellular metabolism, the molecular mechanism of cellular metabolism, the basic concept lies over there. Okay, unless there is complete oxidation, unless mitochondria is involved, the amount of energy produced is very limited, right? Now let us discuss a few lines about ATP, because you know ATP will come as a short note. It will, many things will come as a short note. I'll be telling you what all you need to study. Okay, it is not about knowing the concept alone. It is about answering them in the exam and knowing what questions examiner will ask. Of course, you will need these concepts for your higher medicine lessons as you grow up, but knowing what comes in exam is of utmost importance for first year MBBS students. So ATP is a high energy compound. Fine. So what all points you need to mention if ATP comes as a short note? Now the delta G naught prime, okay, this is the free energy that is broken on hydrolysis of one molecule of ATP, is minus 7.3 kilocalorie per mole. Very, very, very important. This value you should know by heart. Okay, the amount of energy that is produced on breaking of 1 mole of ATP is minus 7.3 kilocalorie. So apart from that, if you mention these, see, if you can mention the structure of ATP, okay, there will be nobody who can stop you. But the structure of ATP is actually very tough. Okay, you need to know the structure of adenine, then you need to add, then you need to make it adenosine, and then you need to add 3-phosphate group. Okay, it's a big structure. But even if you don't know the structure, if you write in a gist, you are fine. So from your physiology knowledge, you already know what functions does ATP perform in the body. You know muscle locomotion, okay, muscle contraction, very important role is played by ATP. Okay, G protein, you know, ATP and GTP forms a major role. So membrane transport and signal transduction, very, very, very important. Not only that, in case of membrane transport, this point, the sodium potassium ATPase, okay, there are multiple active channels where ATP plays a major role. So membrane transport, next signal transduction via GTP and ATP, and then keeping the materials in the cell. Same mechanism, unless there is an active pump, the thing which is intracellular will remain inside the cell. For example, potassium ion. Potassium cannot get outside the cell because of ATP is controlling the sodium potassium ATPase, right? So just remember these points about ATP, but most important point is minus 7.3 kilocalorie per mole. This is the amount of energy that is liberated by one molecule of ATP. Let me change the pen color. Okay, I think it's better now. Anyway, and lastly, nucleotide synthesis. Have you read about synthesis of DNA and RNA? Okay, nucleotide means addition of a phosphate group to a nucleoside. So whenever we add phosphate, it becomes a nucleotide, and ATP is the molecule that catalyzes formation of nucleotide, that catalyzes the addition of a phosphate bond to a nucleoside. So these are the functions of ATP. Now ATP is a high energy compound, but it is not the highest energy compound. Okay, it is an intermediate high energy compound. What do I mean is, in your textbooks you will find a list, a comprehensive list of high energy compounds, and on top of that, the king of that is PEP, phosphoenol pyruvate. Okay, phosphoenol pyruvate is the number one. This is the highest energy compound that you will find in your biological system. Okay. So phosphoenol pyruvate, and you see ATP is located in the middle. ATP to ADP. The change of ATP to ADP liberates this amount of energy in kilocalorie per mole, and this in kilojoule per mole. What is the conversion of kilocalorie and kilojoule? 42. Okay, 4.2. Anyway, so you see there are compounds that are below ATP. Okay, so this has got a very important implication. It means these compounds that are located on top of ATP can actually break down and can form ATP on their own. These have got so much energy, they can form ATP without the involvement of electron transport chain. Alright, so the energy of these substrates can be used in formation of ATP. But these glucose 6-phosphate, pyrophosphate, glycerol 3-phosphate, all these compounds are low energy compounds and they cannot produce ATP on their own. Okay, so mind it, ATP is an intermediate high energy compound. This is the balance, minus 7.3. That compound that has got a higher energy than minus 7.3 is the high energy compound, and these are the low energy compounds. So, in case of biological oxidation, okay, let us first tackle about oxidation and reduction. So, regarding oxidation and reduction, the concepts should be absolutely clear. Students often get confused. What is oxidation? Which one is electron acceptor? Which one is electron donor? Okay, what happens when oxidation happens, whether electron is accepted or removed? Okay, so these things should be very clear, because MCQ questions don't tell you oxidation or reduction. They simply, to make it one step harder, they tell you electron, this substrate A received an electron. Okay, so what does it mean? So notice what I am telling you in this slide. You can write it down, pause this video and never forget. Okay, I think you should know this from your physics knowledge, that biological oxidation involves transfer of electrons. Now, oxidation is termed for removal. Okay, electron loss is oxidation. Okay, removal of electron, and reduction means gain of electron. It is up to you how you remember it. Okay, but remember, oxidation is removal of electrons. Okay, and whenever there is oxidation, there will also be a reduction. Okay, so oxidation is always accompanied by reduction of an electron acceptor. Okay, of course you already know from the concepts of oxidation and reduction that the one which oxidizes itself gets reduced. Okay, so oxidation is always accompanied by reduction of an electron acceptor. But mind it, the most important line in this slide is oxidation means loss of electrons. Okay, just remember this. This is enough, right? So see over here what happens. Oxidation, loss of electrons. Okay, and this is the electron acceptor. See, this has accepted electron. So what has happened? This B has been reduced. Okay, so oxidation, A has been oxidized, electron has been lost, and always who will it lose to? It will lose to B, which is in turn reduced, right? Make this concept very, very, very clear. Now, before going into oxidative phosphorylation, we need to very strong in enzymology. Okay, so I have given a few dedicated slides for the enzymes that are involved in oxidative phosphorylation and biological oxidation and electron transport chain, right? These three are often used simultaneously, interchangeable. But I can take it granted that you already know everything about oxidoreductase class of enzymes, because those are the enzymes that are needed in electron transport chain. Okay, so you can skip the next few slides, you can skip the next 5 to 10 minutes of the video, but if you are not confident or if you have not revised it recently, I highly recommend you to recall or even to take note. Okay, so what happens, the class 1 enzymes oxidoreductase, they include different type of enzymes, okay, and each of them has got a specific role in biological system. They are oxidase, okay, dehydrogenase, hydroperoxidase and oxygenase. Okay, names may appear confusing to you. So oxidases, dehydrogenase, hydroperoxidase and oxygenase. Okay, these are the 4 classes of oxidoreductase enzymes. So all of these enzymes belong to class 1, that is oxidoreductase group of enzymes, this class. Okay, if you know IUPAC classification, it forms under class 1. Okay, class 1. So oxidase use oxygen as electron acceptor, very important. Okay, the electron acceptor for oxidase class of enzymes are oxygen, right? But dehydrogenase enzyme cannot use molecular oxygen as an electron acceptor. Very important. This is one fundamental difference between oxidases and dehydrogenases. They cannot use molecular oxygen as an electron acceptor, right? In case of hydroperoxidase, as the name suggests, hydrogen peroxide, okay, the name is very similar to H2O2. They use H2O2 as a substrate, okay, as an electron acceptor. And lastly, oxygenase, okay, these enzymes, they actually transfer directly, they transfer oxygen. Oxygenase means they will incorporate oxygen into the substrate. Okay, they will take a molecular photo and they will switch it, they will push it inside the substrate. Okay, these are again of 2 types, monooxygenase and dioxygenase. We will be discussing it later. Now see, so what all classes of reaction do these enzymes conduct? Okay, oxidases and dehydrogenases are involved in respiration. It means our chapter of interest that we are studying right now. Okay, oxidases and dehydrogenases. Hydroperoxidase, what they do something which you have already studied. Okay, they neutralize free radicals. Okay, free radicals and antioxidants. So hydroperoxidases will be involved over there, catalyze these enzymes. Okay, and oxygenase enzymes are involved in biotransformation reaction. If you have studied the xenobiotics chapter, okay, detoxification and xenobiotics, over there oxygenase enzymes play a major role. Okay, so all of them are oxidoreductase group of enzymes, but they have got 4 distinctive classes, subclasses, and 2 of them are actively involved in respiration and others are involved in other processes like free radical, antioxidant and detoxification. So now we will deal them one by one. Okay, oh god, this is an enzymology class, but believe me, in order to understand the biological oxidation, you should be very good in enzymology. You need to know enzymology, and as per the competency, it is no longer knowing the complexes. Okay, as I told you, it's knowing how energy is produced inside the cell. So regarding oxidases, what they do actually, so they catalyze the removal of hydrogen from a substrate. So the name oxidase means it will actually oxidize. So how they oxidize? They actually remove hydrogen, okay, with the involvement of oxygen, of course, and oxygen being the proton acceptor, okay, it forms either water or H2O2. So either it forms water or it forms hydrogen peroxide. So this substrate is actually oxidized, okay, as you can see over here. So oxygen is involved, okay, oxygen is the proton acceptor, and they either form water or H2O2, and they exist in two different forms. Now see, you need to not only you need to know oxidase, but if oxidase class of enzyme comes as a short note, you need to give specific example, okay. Now most of them are metal containing enzymes or enzymes that are related to vitamins, okay. So some of them are copper containing enzymes such as cytochrome oxidase, very important. We will be reading this enzyme very soon when you go to the electron transport chain proper. So it is a terminal component of ETC which transferred the electron finally to the oxygen to form water, okay. So as I told you, final electron, the acceptor, okay, finally the electron which is transferred is always to water in case of ETC, right? And this is catalyzed by this cytochrome oxidase enzyme, right? Or they can be not copper linked, okay, they can be linked with vitamin or flavoprotein, vitamin B2, okay. The example include L-amino acid oxidase and xanthine oxidase. Xanthine oxidase, I think you know by now, in purine metabolism, it deficiency leads to production of gout, okay, uric acid, and this is either FMN linked flavin mononucleotide or flavin adenine dinucleotide, FAD linked. So either FMN linked or FAD linked. Mind it, oxidases can be copper linked like cytochrome oxidase or FMN or FAD linked, okay. There is another class of enzyme which will also be linked with FMN and FAD, okay. So this is all about oxidase. Next we go to dehydrogenase. So what does dehydrogenase do? In case of dehydrogenase, there is a coupled reaction of oxidation as well as reduction, okay. They perform two functions. They transfer hydrogen from one substrate to another, okay. Hydrogen is being transferred from one to another, okay. Directly water is not accepting, directly oxygen is not accepting hydrogen, okay. So this is generally a coupled reaction of oxidation reduction. They happen together, okay. There are multiple examples of dehydrogenase, as you already know. There are so many dehydrogenase, and these are also component of this ETC, okay. One example is cytochrome. Cytochrome acts as a dehydrogenase. Apart from that, there are dehydrogenase like NADH dehydrogenase, FADH dehydrogenase, okay. So dehydrogenases are those class of enzyme that transfer hydrogen from one substrate to another in a coupled oxidation or reduction reaction. You already know the coenzymes NAD and FAD, and I already told you what do NAD dependent dehydrogenase do. They actually utilize or extract hydrogen from a single carbon atom, and FAD linked dehydrogenase, they actually extract hydrogen from adjacent carbon atom, okay. So both of them will lead to introduction of double bond. Whatever be the scenario, whether they introduce double bond or whether they insert hydrogen molecule, NAD dependent will always focus on a single carbon atom and FAD will focus on adjacent carbon atom, okay. That is already known. In my previous videos I have told you. So nicotinamide can be in the form of NAD or NADP, and riboflavin can be in the form of FMN or FAD as just the previous classes of enzyme, that is the oxidases. Alright, so this is about dehydrogenase. Okay, how is dehydrogenase different from oxidase? In case of oxidase, molecular oxygen was the electron acceptor, and as I told you, dehydrogenase cannot use molecular oxygen, they use other substrates as proton donor or electron acceptor. Okay. Next, hydroperoxidase. Okay, so hydroperoxidases includes two set of enzyme. Number one catalase and number two peroxidases. Right? What is the basic difference? Basic difference is just like oxidase and dehydrogenase. Okay, peroxidase reduce H2O2 at the expense of several other substances. So now the target is H2O2. H2O2 will be reduced to water, okay, because H2O2 is harmful, we need to convert this peroxidase to water. Peroxidase enzymes utilizes other substrates. That other substrate will provide the necessary proton, okay, or electron, whatever is used in either oxidation or reduction, and then H2O2 is converted to water. See, H2O2 plus AH2, okay, this is the proton donor, thus it is converted to water. So this substrate is used, but catalase is different. Catalase is much more powerful. It catalyzes H2O2, it forces H2O2 to accept the electron. I'll just rub, I've made a mess, so catalase uses H2O2 as electron acceptor. So what happens? This H2O2 will be converted to 2H2O. Along with that, what will happen? Of course, a molecule of oxygen will be lost, and that oxygen will be less harmful. Of course, free oxygen is much less harmful compared to H2O2. H2O2 is highly reactive. Okay, it gives nascent oxygen. Okay, but in presence of catalase, that nascent oxygen is not produced. Nascent, that two molecule of atom of O2 will combine to form oxygen, and it will be lost as bubble. So if you add catalase to a H2O2 solution, brisk bubble will come out. The organism or the organelles that are rich in these enzymes are peroxisomes. Peroxisomes are rich in oxidases and catalase enzymes. Okay. Next, we come to oxygenases. That is the last class of oxidoreductase enzyme. Okay, and we will stop our enzymology discussion over here. Those of you who are bored with enzyme, trust me, this is the last slide of enzymology angle. So what they do, they incorporate oxygen into substrate. Oxygenase, so oxygen will be inserted into a substrate in two steps. Number one, oxygen is bound to the active site of an enzyme. It means the oxygenase enzyme will first take up that oxygen, and in the next step, that bound oxygen is transferred to the substrate. You get my point? It's very easy. Oxygen is not directly going into the substrate. It is first combining with the enzyme, and that enzyme and oxygen bound complex is actually helping oxygen to get into the substrate. Okay, it binds to the active site of the enzyme first. Oxygen binds to the active site. Now, they consist of two set of enzymes. Number one, dioxygenase. What dioxygenase do? They are very powerful. They incorporate both atoms of oxygen into the substrate. So it is very easy to understand. The name dioxygenase incorporate two atom of oxygen. And monooxygenase, so what happens in case of monooxygenase? One atom of oxygen will get into the substrate and the other will be converted to water. Okay, incorporates one atom of oxygen into the substrate and other is reduced to water. Very important. This is a catch question that examiner often asks you in your enzyme viva. What happens with the oxygen molecule in case of action of monooxygenase enzyme? You must say one goes into the substrate and other is converted to water. This is the reaction. Okay, you don't need to know the reaction. Okay, just if you understand the concept that it is converted to water and one is going into the substrate in the form of hydroxyl radical, you are good enough to go to the next slide. So next slide deals with mitochondria. Oh come on, I am again deviating from this chapter and I am going into cell biology. Okay, you already know mitochondria from class 5. I think mitochondria have been taught to you as a cell organelle from class 5. So let us quickly recapitulate. Okay, why? Because mitochondria will also be given as a short note. It may be an adjunct short note separately, or it may come as a part of long question with the question of oxidative phosphorylation. So what all you need to know about mitochondria for exam as well as theoretical point of view. This you already know. Why explain why type of question, why mitochondria is actually known as powerhouse of the cell, because the final energy release takes place in the mitochondria only. The third step, as I told you, the final complete oxidation occurs in mitochondria and energy is released from mitochondria in the form of ATP. So mitochondria is also known as powerhouse of the cell. Now MCQ paper setters have got a special love for mitochondrial membrane. You should know that outer membrane is permeable, it is freely permeable, and inner membrane is selectively permeable. Okay, so in between the outer and inner membrane there is matrix, right? The outer membrane allows in and out going of many metabolites, but not the inner membrane. Inner membrane is selectively permeable, right? What else? Now you need to know what enzymes are present in these on the surface of membranes as well as the intermembrane space. These are common MCQ questions and asked in Viva, so I have included this in the slide. Okay, so the outer membrane consists of various enzymes including acetyl-CoA synthase and glycerol phosphate dehydrogenases. Remember either one of them, they are present in the outer mitochondrial membrane. And what is present in the inner mitochondrial membrane? CK or creatine, sorry, CK is found in the intermembrane space. Okay, inside the mitochondria in the inner membrane, all the other enzymes of electron transport chain, the answer lies there, NADH dehydrogenase, cytochrome oxidase, etc, etc. Fine, but in the intermembrane space creatine kinase is found. Okay, now this is very important. Okay, regarding this cardiolipin, I think you have read in carbohydrate chemistry, okay, or in lipid chemistry as a phospholipid. So this cardiolipin, it is concentrated in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, this is a special, you should take a note, together with the enzymes of the respiratory chain and ATP synthase and various membrane transporter. Why I am telling you this? Number one, this is an MCQ question. Many options will be given and you need to mark cardiolipin. And if the mitochondria comes as a short note, you need to mention all these points: outer membrane, outer membrane permeable, inner membrane selectively permeable, and the enzymes that are present in outer membrane, the intermembrane space, as well as cardiolipin, which is present in the inner membrane together with the enzymes of respiratory chain, okay, and ATP synthase. Now the matrix encloses enzymes of TCA cycle, beta oxidation and PDH complex. Okay, the mitochondrial matrix, very important. So when you are asked name some enzymes that are present in the mitochondrial matrix, just blindly say anything that you remember from these pathways, and I believe you have been, now you well know, okay, what is PDH complex, 3 enzymes and 5 coenzymes, beta oxidation, as well as enzymes of TCA cycle, that you already know from your nutrition base from your childhood. Okay, fine. So this is the structure of mitochondria. Believe me, I will not be showing you this because you should know how a mitochondria looks like, but just make sure that if mitochondria comes as a short note, you should mention the key points that you have told in your answer. Now, as I always tell you, if you don't have time, just draw things. Okay, first draw, then label, and then write. Don't write an essay and give a shit diagram. Examiner will be very annoyed. If you give a proper diagram and a proper labeling without a theory descriptive answer, you will still get more than pass mark. Okay, so this should be your answering style. Now, very few slides are left. We are almost, I think, to a third last slide, I believe. So, before we go into the proper oxidative phosphorylation, we should know how this ATP is generated. This ATP is generated from ADP. So, a molecule of adenosine and 2-phosphate, okay, it needs some energy and a phosphate group. Okay, I will switch to red color. It needs some energy and a phosphate group to form ATP. Right, this you know, and this is the basic reaction. ATP plus inorganic, ADP plus inorganic phosphate, Pi, makes an ATP molecule. Now, this ATP can either be generated by number 2, oxidative phosphorylation, and number 1, substrate level phosphorylation. Okay, so oxidative phosphorylation, you already know what it deals about. I think you know both, but I will still say 2 lines about substrate level phosphorylation, and then we will stop this class. Okay, that's enough for today, and you are primed enough to understand OXPHOS from the next class. So what is substrate level phosphorylation? Substrate level phosphorylation will come as a short note only. You will be asked in Viva, just tell me what is substrate level phosphorylation and give one example of it. That much only you need to know, nothing else matters. Okay, Metallica. Anyway, so what is substrate level phosphorylation? Substrate level phosphorylation is transfer of high energy phosphate. So what is high energy phosphate? Just recall that diagram, okay, where there was phosphoenol pyruvate, creatine kinase, all those enzymes or those phosphate groups that were above ATP, 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, those that have got energy of breaking down liberation more than 7.3 kilocalorie. So they, when they undergo hydrolysis, those high energy phosphate group, and at the expense of that hydrolysis, ADP and Pi combines to form ATP. So this is a high energy compound with a phosphate group. This is high energy phosphate group. Okay, high energy phosphate bond. This high energy phosphate bond will be lysed, and this energy will be used to attach it to ADP. In result, a compound will be formed and ATP will be formed. So we see over here there is no need of any other reaction, and by other reaction I mean the reaction that we will be studying in future, that is a step-by-step reaction, how ATP is produced inside the mitochondria. Those are not at all used over here. So why these are not used? Because the substrate has higher energy level than the product. No doubt about that, in the form of this high energy phosphate bond. And this energy, the surplus energy, is used up for ATP formation. Clear? So this is the diagram of substrate level phosphorylation. For example, phosphoenol pyruvate. As I told you, this is the highest. Most textbook you will find this at the top of high energy phosphate bond. So there is a high energy phosphate bond in case of phosphoenol pyruvate. This phosphate is transferred to ADP, leading to the formation of pyruvate and ATP. Who catalyzes this reaction? Remember, pyruvate kinase. Alright, phosphoenol pyruvate to pyruvate kinase. And this, since a high energy compound is converted to a low energy compound, if we discuss thermodynamics, you will see the change in delta G is such that the reaction, the free energy of reaction is only negative towards this, means this reaction is irreversible. You know PK, this pyruvate kinase enzyme, this is one irreversible enzyme of glycolysis. Okay, and all the enzymes that performs this substrate level phosphorylation, they actually involve formation, breaking of a high energy bond and formation of a low energy bond. Low energy bond means ATP. Yes, ATP is already a high energy compound, but compared to PEP, ATP is a low energy compound. I hope you get the analogy. So whenever a high energy phosphate bond is broken down to produce a low energy phosphate bond, that step will be irreversible. So this is a irreversible step of glycolysis and transferring a phosphate directly from ADP to another molecule, right? So over here, phosphoenol pyruvate to ADP, the phosphate is transferred, right? So this is it. We will stop here. I think the basics have already been discussed. Okay, just rewind this slide, rewind the areas of enzymology, rewind the areas of electron donors and electron acceptors. Okay, and also rewind the areas of mitochondria, anything that you didn't know, and at last substrate level phosphorylation. So if you are done, you are now prepared to go into the proper class of oxidative phosphorylation, which will definitely be the next part of this video. So feel free to get back to me with any query in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one. Till then, bye and take care. Class, but believe me, you need to know enzymology in order to understand biological oxidation, and it is no as per the competency. Power is cut. Shit, power is gone. I hope you can see me. Oh God. Dut.